Just when we thought we had it all figured out, your studs became duds at running back, and some RBs actually got hurt. So what do you do now? It's week 16. Let's figure it out. We're going to go through every matchup and tell you who to start and who to sit. Although some of these guys might have let you down last week, these are still the must starts. Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Devon Achane, Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, Joe Mixon, and Jahmyr Gibbs. While you're getting your lineup set to pull out a playoff win in your fantasy, why not go for a win in Underdog if you're doing NFL pick'ems? Remember, if you're signing up for the first time, you're new to Underdog, they'll give you a free pick. You can win right off the bat, and you get free cash. Just use code ENDGAME when you check out as a new customer and get up to $1,000 of bonus cash in your account. Just make sure to put that promo code ENDGAME. Let's start, as always, with the first game of the week on Thursday night. It's the Broncos at the Chargers. Well, I don't think there's any must-start RBs in this matchup at all, but let's go through them. So for Denver, what about Javonte Williams?
No, you cannot start this guy. I mean, you're just asking to have your season ended here. Hard pass on Javonte Williams.
You already know what I'm going to say. Let's see. Javonte Williams, no. Jaleel McLaughlin, he has a quad injury, and even if he didn't, I won't care. It's a no for me.
Yeah, hard pass on Jaleel McLaughlin as well.
And then the Chargers, who would have thought they would miss J.K. Dobbins this much? But Gus Edwards is still the RB1 there, but can you play Gus Edwards?
No, this is touchdown or bust, and you should be able to do better. And this is still a good Chargers run defense. No way am I starting Gus Edwards.
Gus has just not come through at all. Doesn't matter how many carries, what the game situation is. I mean, he's getting you nothing. 23 yards last week. I'll tell you what, let's say definitely no to him in any fantasy playoffs, any fantasy league, even if you're playing for the toilet bowl, it doesn't matter. No to Gus Edwards. And you know what? Go to Underdog when you're doing your picks, especially if you are signing up for the first time, you're going to get a free pick. Why don't you take the lower on Gus Edwards, 37.5 yards? He didn't even get that last week. He's not even averaging that over the past month, despite having the lead role here with no Dobbins. So going lower on Gus Edwards at 37.5 yards. You can do the same, or you can take any pick you like when you get a free pick already. Good chance to win when you're trying Underdog pick'ems. Now this week, with college football over, we're going to have two Saturday games in the NFL, and the first one is the Texans and the Chiefs. Despite last week's dud, we're still going to say you should start Joe Mixon. What do you do with the Chiefs backfield? A 50-50 split? We did not think that was going to still be happening this late into the season. So, is Isaiah Pacheco startable?
Barely startable, just because he has that explosive ability and he could score. Also, we don't even know if it's going to be Mahomes or Wentz here, so I'm going to say flex, but very risky flex.
You know, it's to the point where with Pacheco, obviously he's either not as far along health-wise as he should be, or they're just saving him for the playoffs. I don't know, but I don't want to start him. Only if you happen to get hurt by the Monty injury, some other RB injuries, or something's going on and you really need a desperation streamer. And even with that said, despite Kareem Hunt getting as many carries, I can't start Kareem Hunt.
No, cannot start Kareem Hunt here. Just way too risky in such a big game.
The other Saturday game will be the Steelers at the Ravens. This is still two of the toughest run defenses in the NFL. So, where will Najee Harris rank?
Barely a flex, and even then, not a flex I even want to play, but I get some of you might need to flex him. This is still a tough Baltimore run defense, and Najee Harris just so underwhelming. Barely a flex.
Exactly. Feel the same about him as last week, going against a very tough Eagles defense. Basically the same. I don't want to. A desperation flex. And then Jalen Warren, any different?
Not even a flex, because at least Najee gets the bulk of the carries. I'm not starting Jalen Warren.
No, I'm not starting Jalen Warren. You need some upside. And I said on the waiver video at the very end, he's on the cut list. You don't really have to just hold on to him for the sake of holding on to him. And now possibly the first time, I think all season, maybe since week 1, we're going to talk about Derrick Henry, because now with so many teams in the playoffs, you have loaded rosters, you might consider benching Derrick Henry. But could you do it?
This is tough. This is going to be one of the toughest decisions of the week because it's a tough matchup against the Steelers' run defense. He hasn't scored in 3 straight games, but I'm not going to outright bench Derrick Henry. We've talked about some pretty bad running backs so far. Derrick Henry, head and shoulders above those guys, but I think this week in this matchup, I'm only going to say Derrick Henry a solid start.
Yeah, I mean, we can't put him lower than that because he does not belong in the same tier as guys like Najee Harris. But at the same time, it's crazy. After scoring in almost every single game the first 11 weeks of the season, he has not scored in 3 straight. I didn't even think that was possible, but obviously it's possible, not even against the Giants. And now he gets the Steelers. I think he's at the low end of the solid tier. He always could score or break out a big run, but you can't count on it anymore. So what about Justice Hill? He actually got a little bit of run last week.
He did and had that long touchdown, but again, this is just too risky with so much on the line. I'm not starting Justice Hill.
Agreed. This is the most desperate of desperation flexes. Nobody's on bye. There's not that many injuries. You really shouldn't need to go this deep. So let's just say no. Now, hopefully this video helps you with all your start sit decisions, but if you still have questions for start sit, waiver wire trades, or anything fantasy football related, use the Draft Lane app because that connects you directly with Chris and myself for all your fantasy football needs. Download it for free right now. Now the Giants are going to take on the Falcons this week. Back to another timeshare. Tyrone Tracy should have been the lead guy, but he just didn't get all the workload in week 15. Do you think that changes in week 16?
It might, but it might not. And the Falcons, despite being a bad defense, are pretty good against the run. So this is very risky here. I'm going to say Tracy, a risky flex.
I mean, we knew it was a tough matchup last week, but I really didn't see Singletary vulturing him at the goal line, getting about as many touches. It's disappointing, to be honest. You just can't trust Tracy, so a very risky flex. And then Devin Singletary, I mean, sure, he scored, but do you feel like he's equivalent to Tracy?
He did get the goal line carry, and he actually caught more passes, which I really didn't think was going to happen. But again, I can say nothing more than a risky flex for Devin Singletary.
I think a little bit riskier because I still feel like Tracy does have more upside. At least he should. So just the bottom of the barrel in terms of the flex tier. Now the Patriots taking on the Bills in Buffalo. Ramondre Stevenson, well, he looked a little fresher after the bye. You also have to worry because the snap share wasn't exactly what you would want it to be. Can we play Ramondre despite this technically being a good matchup on paper?
I feel like Ramondre is becoming one of those guys that's better in real life than in fantasy. Like he puts up good real life numbers, but the fantasy numbers just aren't there. It is a good matchup against this Bills run defense, but does that even matter for Ramondre and the Patriots? I'm going to say he's just a flex, but of all the flexes we've talked about so far, he'd be the highest end of the flexes.
So far, agree with that. But I don't think he'll be the best flex option that we're going to talk about. One thing he's stopped doing completely is scoring. He hasn't scored any touchdowns for several weeks, and that's because this offense just doesn't have that much upside. So I'm just going to put him at the lower end of the flex tier as well. Now, you should probably feel good about almost everybody in the Buffalo offense these days, especially James Cook. Yeah, forget Detroit's run defense. He shredded it. You were worried that might happen if you sat James Cook, and it happened. So what's the confidence level in Cook this week?
It's got to be high against this Patriots run defense. I mean, there's always a risk that, Josh Allen takes all the touchdowns or they're just up so big that they don't play James Cook much in the second half or the fourth quarter. But you got to take that risk because the upside is so high. Strong start this week.
He's got to be a strong start. And I know that game just kind of got out of hand, but the way this Buffalo offense is rolling, yeah, if I have Cook, I'm pretty much starting him. Will there be any leftovers for Ray Davis? I mean, like you said, maybe this game does get out of hand. Maybe Davis gets more touches than usual.
Maybe, but do you really want to count on that in your fantasy lineup at this point of the season? No chance.
Exactly. This feels like something that just shouldn't have to go down in your fantasy playoffs unless you're decimated by injury. So let's just say no to Davis. The Cardinals at the Panthers. You're going to have two absolute workhorse backs here, especially for James Conner because Amari DeMarcado was already banged up and now Trey Benson is hurt. Maybe both will miss this week. Who knows? So how high do you have to be on Conner?
As high as you can be without being a no-doubt must start. I think James Conner an absolute strong start this week. Probably the strongest of the strong starts.
Exactly. I think we're going to have to duke it out to see who gets to pick him as a boom this week. It's too obvious. You have James Conner. There's almost no chance that you're benching him unless your other running backs are named Bijan or Saquon. Now, on the other hand, Chuba Hubbard was supposed to smash last week, and he's one of those guys that just busted. Does he bounce back?
He should. It's a good matchup. Cardinals not a tough run defense. He's still the only guy they got in this backfield. I'm going to still say Chuba Hubbard is a strong start this week.
Yeah, I mean, it was really the game script. It wasn't Chuba, I should say, that busted. It was just The Panthers just got mauled by the Cowboys, go figure. I guess a little bit of a pride game from the Cowboys from being underdogs there. I'm not sure how much pride the Cardinals have here. The Panthers should bounce back. I think Chuba's still a strong start because he's getting so many opportunities. With the Lions at the Bears, we know that David Montgomery will not be there. He is done for the season, so you have to start Gibbs. There's no question. But does that make Craig Reynolds, as the RB2 in Detroit, fantasy relevant?
It makes him fantasy relevant because he's going to have to do something, but, I mean, are they really going to trust Craig Reynolds the way they trusted David Montgomery? I don't think so. I just think we see a ton of Gibbs. I'm not starting Craig Reynolds.
I'm definitely not starting Craig Reynolds either. I would rather take a flyer on a guy like Ray Davis or somebody who has some upside. I just can't do it here. This reeks of desperation. And then for the Bears, despite being banged up for the last couple of weeks on the injury report, DeAndre Swift is still pretty much it in that backfield. So how do you feel about Swift against, well, frankly, a decimated Lions defense?
Yeah, I don't think we can view this Lions defense the way we did for most of the season. They're so banged up. But at the same time, how good can we feel about DeAndre Swift? Only a flex this week and one with limited upside.
He did get a little bit more run in terms of actually touching the ball in week 15, but still, they've been more pass heavy, ever since the switch at OC. I think they're going to have to be pretty pass heavy still against the Lions, so I think he's just a flex. The Titans taking on the Colts this week. Let's start with what could all of a sudden now be a two-headed monster in Tennessee. Tony Pollard also has been all sorts of banged up, but he still managed to play through it. How good do you feel about Pollard these days?
Can't feel great these days. I don't think he's close to 100%. I think he is very banged up. But he still is the lead back here as far as carries go, and it is a good matchup against the Colts. So I'll say a flex, but a good flex.
I'd like to see him not show up on the injury report or missing practice this week. And if that happens, I'm going to put him in the solid tier because he's been pretty good. This is a good matchup. I really think he's just been limited a little bit physically. So I could move him down a little bit if I'm worried about his health. But right now, I think he should be at least solid. Now, one of the hot pickups of the week is Tyjae Spears, one of those guys that absolutely nobody started because why would you? And yet he outscored guys like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley and Joe Mixon. So with that said, Tyjae Spears versus the Colts. Tempted?
I'm tempted, but oh man, you're looking at a guy who did most of his damage through the air last week, and he can do that. That's certainly what he can do. That is definitely a big part of his game. But are the Colts going to force the Titans to, be in complete pass mode like the Bengals did? I'm not so sure. Again, I'm going to say Tyjae Spears just a flex, but a risky one.
I think last week just puts him in the flex conversation. But again, only if you lost Monty or somebody else at running back. And again, you have to take into account they were down big. It was all about the receptions. It was a lot of it in the second half. And with a quarterback switch, we don't even know who's going to be quarterback for the Titans. So just a risky flex. And then there's Jonathan Taylor, OJT. I really hope you didn't cost too many people their fantasy championship by dropping the ball before the goal line. I think we can forgive him, and I think we can still start him, but what tier does he sit in?
Yeah, I don't know. If I lost my matchup because of that, I'm not sure I could forgive him. I mean, it's almost inexcusable for anybody in football to do that, but it still happens. That being said, he still had a nice game, right over 100 yards. I mean, should have had that touchdown. I can't say strong start this week because I think there's just running backs I feel better about, but I'll say very, very solid start.
Well, I mean, the Titans these days are starting to just, fall down defensively into the mediocre ranks. I still think I'm going to put Jonathan Taylor as a strong start. I think he should be motivated to bounce back. They should be able to run the ball pretty efficiently in this game, so I'll say lower end of the strong tier. Now, Eagles at Commanders. You're still starting Saquon, don't worry. Brian Robinson, all right, didn't quite smash last week, but he still got a ton of touches, but now he gets the Eagles.
Yeah, I got the touches, but man, really did not come through in what I thought would be a smash matchup. Definitely a disappointment for me last week, but he is getting the touches here. There's really no threat to his workload. He could score, but because it's a tough matchup, I'm going to say only a solid start this week.
Yeah, the Eagles are for real. I think you have to knock them down at least a peg, but just based on volume, I don't think he can be less than a solid start. Now with the Rams at the Jets, you're still good with Kyron. Are you good with Breece Hall? I mean, he's back, and for what it's worth, Braylon Allen has a back injury, so maybe he's out of the mix here. What do you do with Brees this week?
Hey, he did fall into the end zone at the very end of the game. I mean, technically the game-winning touchdown, so good for him, but, didn't do a whole lot outside of that. But if Braylon Allen is out, he should get more work. Hopefully he's a little more healthy. Not scared of this Rams run defense. I'll say this week, Breece Hall is solid.
Yeah, we were scared to play him last week, and he really didn't do anything other than that really late touchdown to warrant starting. I mean, it's not like he looked great, but he's good enough. He's better than a lot of these other options we've already mentioned. So, yeah, I guess solid sounds about right. The Browns are taking on the Bengals this week. So we're going to have a new/old running back in the mix for Cleveland. It's Jerome Ford because Nick Chubb's season is over, sadly. Now, we've seen Jerome Ford in the lead role before, and I don't think he quite really took advantage of it early in the season. Can he do it now?
Maybe. We could see Deontay Foreman or other guys in the mix, but man, this is a good matchup against the Bengals. I know they're way worse against the pass than the run, but they're still really bad defense here. He could at least score. I'll say Jerome Ford, low-end solid start this week.
You said it. Like, based on this matchup, he should be a strong start because the Bengals are still a horrible defense. Based on the usage he should get, based on how good he's been, he averages over 5 yards a carry. But for some reason, the Browns just don't seem to want to give him that workhorse role, and we're probably going to see way more Deontay Foreman than we want. But that said, I think he's at least a solid start because it's the Bengals. Next, we have the Vikings taking on the Seahawks. All right, well, let's talk Aaron Jones, and for what it's worth, this Seahawks offense might look very different under Sam Howell if that's the case. So do you feel like this is a good path for Aaron Jones to get more run?
I feel like it's a good path for Aaron Jones. Seahawks run defense doesn't scare me. Game script should be on the side of the Vikings. Aaron Jones has mostly been good this year. Maybe not great for fantasy, but real life he's been very good. I think Aaron Jones, not going to say like the strongest of the strong starts, but a low-end strong start.
That feels about right. You can always put together a good game. This defensive matchup is just kind of middle of the road, so I feel he's a fairly strong start. Now, there are a couple reasons to be concerned with the Seattle backfield. First of all, Kenneth Walker didn't play last week. We don't know if he's going to play this week, and if he does, how healthy is he going to be? And he hasn't even been that good even before he got hurt. And then there's the Sam Howell factor, potentially. So with all that said, oh wait, by the way, they also faced one of the top run defenses in Minnesota. So could you start Kenneth Walker if it was your fantasy playoff life on the line?
I'm not going to say Kenneth Walker is an outright bench if he plays, because I do still think if he plays, he will get most of the run here, and he does always have that home run ability, touchdown potential, but just low end of the solid starts.
I'm going to put him as a flex, and that's about it. I mean, like I said, he wasn't really coming through before the injury. Even if he's 1,000% healthy, this is not a good spot. I still think they're going to give Charbonnet a fair amount of touches. And again, this could be a really disappointing game for Seattle overall. I don't want to go so far as to say you can't start him, but I really don't want to. If Walker doesn't go again, or even if he does, it might be tough to rank Zach Charbonnet this week after pretty much a big letdown.
Yeah, and this is a tough matchup. I will say if Walker is out, I'll put him in the solid starts, but if Walker plays, he's in a void.
Pretty much what I'm feeling. No Walker, solid just because he can catch passes, could score a touchdown, but a risky solid start if that's possible. And if Walker plays, I'm just out. The Jags are going to take on the Raiders this coming week. So it's still a timeshare there between Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby. Let's start with Etienne. How you feeling about him these days?
Maybe slightly better, because at least he got some carries last week, not like the week before, but how good can you ever really feel about Travis Etienne? Yeah, if you're even alive with Travis Etienne, I'd like to see the rest of your team. You probably don't need him, so let's avoid him.
I know I'd like to just avoid this backfield. I don't think I really care who's the starter or getting more touches. I'm just going to say no to Travis Etienne, and then Tank Bigsby, although I feel slightly less worse about, I'm just going to say no to.
Yeah, I'm saying no to both these guys.
Now for the Raiders, just goes to prove you still can't trust this backfield. Sincere McCormick was the guy until he left with an injury on Monday Night Football. If he's good to go for Week 16, would you play him?
I don't think so, because now I'm worried. Like, we saw Madison, we saw Abdullah. Now I'm worried, like, is he 100%? Is he still the workhorse running back here? This is risky. I'm going to pass on McCormick this week.
Exactly. Too much risk. It's just not a good offense. Even though the matchup is great, yeah, I think his opportunity might be drying up here, so I'm going to have to pass. So if Sincere is out, just possible, then I guess it's back to Alexander Madison. He was getting all the carries after McCormick left. Could you consider Madison?
I mean, it's a good matchup, but it's also Alexander Madison and the Raiders. No.
No. I think I'm just going to say no to any Raider running back. I don't even care who it is anymore. But what the heck, let's talk Amir Abdullah too. I mean, he did have a couple of games where he kind of did something at some point this season. I feel like I remember that. Would you consider Abdullah?
I remember that too, but no.
Now we got the 49ers at the Dolphins in Miami. As disappointing as the Fins have been, you're still starting Achane, too much upside. What about Isaac Guerrero? A little bit more time to recover from that foot sprain. He still got plenty of touches last Thursday. What do you do?
I think you got to feel pretty good here. I mean, the Miami defense has been better and better against the run as well, but still not a shutdown run defense. He's got home run potential. He catches passes. I think Isaac Guerrero, for me, is going to be a high-end, very solid start this week.
Exactly. Got that home run ability. Should have a pretty good bounce back week. The ceiling isn't going to be super high, right? Don't want to get carried away here. But yeah, I think he's definitely a solid option and could be your RB2 if you need him. Sunday night, Bucs at the Cowboys. Well, I guess we shouldn't doubt Bucky Irving any longer. I mean, he played and he looked pretty good, although it was a pretty even split with Rachaad White. So with that said, where do you rank Bucky?
I'm going to put Bucky in the strong starts against Cowboys. I was too low on him last week. Didn't think he was 100%. He looked great. Now he gets his Cowboys matchup. Should be even healthier. Strong start.
Exactly. He's good to go, and he looked pretty good to go. This Cowboys defense, I know they just pretty much shut down Chuba Hubbard, but I don't feel like they're going to do it 2 weeks in a row. I'm going to start Bucky Irving, strong start. So does that mean Rachaad White also has to be a strong start?
Not a strong start for me because he's just not as good as Bucky, but he's still going to be a solid start in this matchup.
I think high-end solid. They are giving him goal line carries. He still catches passes, but it's hard to know if they're going to give Bucky more work if he's a little bit healthier going into this matchup. So, yeah, I'm good with that. Let's say he's solid. Rico Dowdle has been way more than solid for, 3 straight weeks. He is smashing. Does he do it against the Bucs?
Yeah, the problem is he's smashing in real life, but not in fantasy because there's just no touchdown upside for him. Maybe this is the week it happens. This is not a great matchup. Bucs run defense has been better, but I think Rico Dowdle, because he's been so good and getting so many yards, is a solid start.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. It's true. Tampa Bay's run defense has clamped down quite a bit over the last few weeks. That said, Rico is still solid, but don't get carried away based on last week's stats. Then on Monday night, we got the Saints taking on the Packers at Lambeau Field. Not sure what the weather conditions are going to be like in Green Bay, but we're also not sure if Alvin Kamara is going to play. Remember, he left that game last week early with a groin injury. Sounds pretty sketchy about his availability, but if he gives it a go, are you trusting him with your playoff life?
Yeah, I said Derrick Henry is going to be one of the toughest decisions. This is also going to be one of the toughest decisions because Alvin Kamara low-key has not been good for a while now. He hasn't been bad. He's had a floor. He at least gives you a floor. But the ceiling just hasn't been there for Alvin Kamara recently. Now he's banged up on the road in Green Bay. I think I still have to consider Kamara a strong start, but lower-end strong start.
This is why we do the live streams. We answer questions, why we have Draft Lane, because this really depends on who else you have, right? Isaac Guerrero versus Kamara, I might go Guerrero. Aaron Jones versus Kamara, I'll go Jones. Tyjae Spears, no, I won't do that. So this is going to be, to me right now, not knowing his availability, I'm going to say a risky flex. And let's end with a guy who's probably going to be one of the top waiver wire pickups of this week. It's Kendre Miller, who could be the replacement for Kamara. He's already been getting more action, even with Kamara playing. So with that said, how do you view Miller with or without Kamara on the field?
Well, with Kamara, he's a risky flex. But without Kamara, I'll say low-end solid because he doesn't catch passes the way Kamara does. He's pretty much just a one-dimensional between the tackles guy. But he's going to get all the carries and he could score. So low-end solid if Kamara is out.
I don't think we can get too high here because, again, this is not an ideal matchup because the Packers on the road, Saints offense is just, it's not one of the best. Spencer Rattler is not going to strike fear into the hearts of the linebackers. They're probably going to crowd the box. So I'm actually just going to put him in the flex tier now I think about it. You know you need to make the right lineup decisions. Win or go home. It's fantasy playoff time, so check out every video we have for start, sit, and more Week 16.